next session in about now, because of everybody logging in from overseas. We have to sort of stick to a timetable, so they don't get cross that they've missed something. Right. So Lauren Windmeyer is the public policy manager at Persona, which is an age verification or age provider, age assurance provider, and she's going to be exploring or talking about Atlas, something that they developed, which is global in nature and is a sort of map of the regulatory regimes around the world. So, Lauren, over to you.
Great. Thank you for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren, and I'm a public policy manager at Persona. Huge thank you to the ACCS for hosting us this week. It's actually my entire team's first time here in Manchester, so thrilled to be here. Persona is an identity and cybersecurity company. We cover all aspects of identity infrastructure to be sure that it's rooted in privacy. So we focus on privacy-preserving solutions to KYB, workforce identity verification, AML, business fraud prevention, and more. And we serve all industries, all sizes of business, and our work covers over 200 countries and territories. But age assurance is one of the fastest growing aspects of our business. More and more folks have been approaching us to work on age assurance solutions, in part, yes, because of evolving regulations, but also in part by a motivation to keep their platforms a safe space for their younger users. And like many of you, we have found it hard to keep track of the way that age assurance legislation is evolving. We have customers approaching us with news articles, wondering if they'll need to start implementing age verification in new geographies. And our own team was constantly checking trade publications, newsletters, media sites, and more, just to try and stay on top of where age assurance laws were changing. And we've seen a huge uptick in the sheer number of laws related to age assurance worldwide. So to try and solve for this, we built a global collaborative free database called Atlas to try and not only keep our own team up to speed on where laws are changing, but to keep our customers and the broader public informed as well. And our goal really is to move beyond age and into privacy best practices. So today we wanted to walk you through this resource and tell you how you can get involved with it. But we also wanted to share some of the trends that we're starting to see in global age assurance regulation worldwide. So why build this and who is it for? Well, in 2025 and 2026 alone, there were over 400 proposed age assurance bills worldwide. And for anyone who is working and operating globally, it would take hundreds of hours to make sure that your team was staying up to date with where rules and regulations are changing. We know that regulations vary widely, they evolve quickly, and they're often written across different jurisdictions and languages. I'll see if my little video here works. Anyway, we could play the video. Oh. There we go. So we build Atlas to make keeping up with this a bit easier. It's a free public database that tracks and summarizes global identity regulations, starting with age-related laws. But our goal was to create a compliance resource that could also foster additional collaboration. So this is meant to be a source of centralized information with the ability to build on top of it through a public API. We've also built an open input process that would allow regulators and relying parties alike to share resources and to make edits and contributions. And we created this with three audiences in mind. First, regulators. Second, customers. And last, our own teams as we try and keep up with compliance requirements. But we've also found one unintended audience, and that's critics or entities that have been very vocal about their opposition to age verification providers and to companies who are implementing age verification. We found it helpful just to have a way for folks to be able to see the full breadth and scope and scale of some of the difficulties in keeping up and complying with global regulation. So far the feedback, especially from customers, has been pretty positive, and folks have been using this as a resource to track where their compliance needs are moving. So what does this include? Our research covers over 120 laws and proposed regulations across 40 countries and 30 states. And the content spans social media restrictions, explicit content bans, data protection frameworks, app store requirements, and child-oriented design standards. We cover active and proposed age assurance laws globally, as well as data privacy laws that impact minors. And in our summaries, we include any language specific to age assurance methods. We specify who the law applies to, and we identify any penalties. We also link to the original law. And in some cases, we might reference additional materials that we used to help us interpret law. So often this is think tank blog, law firm blog posts, or think tank articles, or anything that can help us just get a little more sense of it. One caveat I will add, we generally don't include proposed laws at the state level in the US, mostly due to the sheer volume of them and the fact that very few will actually pass and go into effect. But once a bill gains enough momentum and goes to the governor's office for approval, then we will add it in here. And this helps us cut down on some redundant legislation that has little chance of passing. So how do we search and update this? Well, we use AI to an extent, but a lot of it is done manually. We use an AI agent to help us track new laws that have been proposed and where new legislation is going into effect. We read and review every law, we write summaries, and we do a manual fact check to make sure that we are interpreting it correctly. However, it's not meant to be legal advice. It's meant to be just a starting resource. In some instances, especially in the Global South, or where the law isn't originally in English, we have to translate the legislation and infer from there. Especially where the law isn't covered in English language media. And we do a monthly review of any new laws, changes to existing regulation, and any updates from legislation that was proposed that then now goes and moves to becoming law. And another way to update this is through public collaboration, and that's where you all come in. You'll see a collab link in the top right-hand corner, and that gives folks the option to reach out to our team. So we invite you all to search through this and reach out to us if we can make any additions or improvements. And our goal really is for this to be a collaborative tool and a community resource, and that works a lot better if it's a two-way street. So that's a little bit about Atlas, but what can it tell us about trends in global age assurance policy? What do we learn from trying to landscape the entire universe of age laws? Well, we know that age assurance is becoming a baseline legal requirement worldwide. And with that, we can identify some key trends. So our first finding is that legislation is moving from content to infrastructure. So the first wave of age assurance laws targeted content that already had a clear age gate, like gambling and adult or explicit content. We've seen the next wave start to target specific social media platforms and even social media features. And now we're starting to see regulation more start to target app stores and operating systems. So for example, in the US, 5 states have laws requiring app stores to verify the user's age at the time of account creation and to provide age signals to developers. Singapore's Code of Practice for Online Safety has a similar requirement, and they require app stores to implement system-level age assurance. And California has a law set to go into effect next year that requires age verification at the operating system level. So this tells us a bit about the difficulty that comes along with trying to regulate dozens or hundreds of sites and the move towards trying to place the responsibility for age assurance increasingly onto app stores to try and solve for this patchwork. This is also thought to be more of a privacy-preserving approach because it doesn't require a person to continuously redo their age verification depending on the site. And something interesting to consider as a case study is what's happening in the US right now. We anticipate that regulation is going to continue happening at the state level and in the courts, since any federal laws for the US are still being debated. Right now in the US, about 16 states have age assurance laws that are either active or in the works that are focused on youth safety, including in California and New York, which are massive markets. This is in addition to the 25 state laws that target adult content specifically. So we're starting to see more of this gain momentum at the state level. There's still a lot of uncertainty into how American courts will react to these laws. Some of the major ones have been blocked, like one in Texas, where the courts ruled that it was too broad and too vague. But court decisions are going to be telling us a lot about how age assurance laws will be implemented in the US going forward. And I think we can expect to see more at that level rather than at the federal legislative level. So our second finding, we see a lot of variance in the age threshold for social media restrictions, generally converging around ages 4 to 16. So while social media restrictions have gone into effect in only a few countries, a lot of them have announced their plans to implement new restrictions. So that's what the slide is looking at. And where social media restrictions are taking place, there's not a clear or obvious consensus for what that age band should be. Social media restrictions always make the news. These laws are the easiest to track, in part because of the attention and the headlines that they generate. But there's not a really clear sense of what the right age for social media access is. It's not as black and white as adult content laws, which almost universally have an over 18 threshold. And that divergence of age makes the regulatory landscape even more fragmented. And this can make compliance trickier and more complex, especially if you are in a platform that's operating in multiple geographies. So our third finding, age assurance laws are becoming more specific, but at the same time are targeting a wider audience. So both the breadth and the depth of age assurance laws are changing. A lot of laws now are starting to tackle design features that have been deemed addictive. So we see draft laws in Turkey and in Portugal that mention how social media platforms must adapt their features for minors. We've also seen specific callouts for loot boxes, autoplay, engagement streaks, public reaction metrics, and overnight notifications. And of course, it's hard to reasonably implement this if you don't first know who your minor users are. We're also starting to see the scope of those impacted by regulation expanding as well. So now, instead of simply saying that there's a law that's going to target a specific social media platform or a type of social media, a lot of laws now will apply to any product or service that can likely or reasonably be accessed by children. So we see this in the Philippines with the guidelines on child-oriented transparency, and also in Brazil with their digital ECA. And we also see specific language on this in several US laws as well, including in California and in Maryland. And with these changes, penalties for noncompliance are also getting much larger. So there's a lot more specifics written into the laws now on how the regulation will be enforced, and more detail on the penalty fee structure or any damages or fines. So our next finding, privacy-preserving age verification is the regulatory North Star, but implementation is rapidly changing. So regulations are starting to shift as more countries begin to think about what age-appropriate design looks like in practice. And all of us are here because we want age verification that is at once accurate, effective, and private. But the challenge is understanding how to regulate this without also creating new privacy risks. So laws are starting to reflect this push and pull a little bit, and folks are trying to start to account for this. So in France, the law requires double anonymity. Italy requires a double-blind two-step process. Portugal requires ZPKs. And recently, the European Commission released a blueprint for privacy-preserving age verification, and they're working with 5 member states to operationalize this. But apart from these requirements for double anonymity, it's actually pretty rare to see specifics around what type of age verification technology should be used. A lot of laws say something to the effect of requiring a reasonable method of age verification. And in some countries, this is by design, since technology is often just one piece of the puzzle and may evolve faster than the law as written themselves can. And where a national ID infrastructure is highly developed, those laws are a bit more straightforward. I think South Korea is a really great example of this, and Argentina in their law ranks age verification methods, and they prioritize national digital ID systems. So our last finding, age assurance is being co-developed alongside stronger data protection laws for minors. So age assurance laws tell us whether a person can access specific content, but data protection laws tell us what information can be collected about them. And more laws use these as complementary frameworks. We see this taking place in Brazil, in India with their Digital Personal Protection Act, and recently California's Age Appropriate Design Code launched alongside its Digital Age Assurance Act. And since these two frameworks are often so complementary to each other, we need to start reframing how we think about compliance. It's no longer just about meeting one certain requirement, but about the entire downstream experience. And age assurance should really be unlocking a suite of obligations that are related to online safety and data protection. Great. So how can you all get involved? Well, again, our goal is to keep tracking where new laws are introduced, how existing laws are amended, and where age assurance regulations are moving. And truly, this is meant to be an evolving and collaborative resource. Our goal is to try and bridge the gap between regulators and platforms. So we will continue to update this monthly, but we encourage y'all to view this as something you can contribute to and build off of. So please do follow up with us. We'd love to meet with you here or after the conference. And if you have any questions or suggestions, especially if it relates to a jurisdiction that you cover or have a lot of familiarity with, please do reach out to us either through email or find one of us while we're here. We'd love to hear from you. And if anyone has any questions, I've got a little bit of time.
Perfect timing. Can I just ask a very obvious question?
Of course.
Having tried many, many years ago to compile a similar atlas in relation to child protection legislation generally, not specific to age verification, the cost and time involved in doing it was just gigantic. So And this is, you're saying this is available free to anybody? It's online?
Yes.
Somebody's paying for it somewhere.
It's me, so
you?
it's my time. I'm Persona's first public policy manager focused on age, and a big reason for bringing me on board was to try and do this to an extent. But I think it's a good reminder for those of us who are working in the space that there's a lot to keep track of. There's a lot popping up. I think one of the slides I had said 400 proposed rules, and it's hard for folks working in this to constantly keep track of where things are going. One of the things we don't have right now, but would like to include, is something like a change log, where maybe even like a newsletter where folks can sign up and see what additions we've made and what we've added, or things that have moved from proposed to active. So it does take a lot of time. I will say AI has come a long way in helping us be able to identify things, especially where laws aren't written in English or they're not covered by English language media. That helps quite a bit. But another outcome we hope from all of this is that folks can actively contribute to it and tell us where we've missed something, and so we can keep it up to date.
Any other questions, either online or from within the room? It's an amazing thing. I'm flabbergasted. It's tremendous. I'll be one of your regular readers.
Great. Glad to hear it.
Very simple question. Will you create also a stream out of it? So it can be like a stream that you can import it into other apps?
Yes, we have that feature now, so you should be able to use it.
It's API based? Or?
Yes, API based.
Well, you've knocked everybody dead.
Come chat with us. Come find us. We're here.
Okay.
Great.
Great. Well, thanks very much
Thank you.
indeed. That was wonderful.